Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. All right, this episode of Anti-War News is sponsored by the Expat Money Online Summit, which returns this October. This is the third year in a row that they are sponsoring the show and that we are helping promote the event. And the Expat Money Summit is hosted by Mikkel Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, a friend of ours at antiwar.com. And this free online event is packed with real strategies that you can use right now, like acquiring second residencies and citizenships, legally mitigating taxes, purchasing international real estate, setting up offshore banking, and more. This year's summit is focused on Latin America, and for very good reason, with all of the changing dynamics down there, and that is where Mikkel is based as well. So over 3 jam-packed days from October 10th to the 12th, Mikkel is bringing together top-tier experts to help you build your offshore plan B quickly and effectively in the region. Head over to expatmoneysummit.com to reserve your free ticket today. And once again, I will be speaking on one of the exclusive VIP panels. So if you want to get a VIP ticket, listeners of this show can use the code ANTIWAR for 20% off a VIP ticket, which includes lifetime replays, exclusive panels, and more. So go to expatmoneysummit.com and don't forget to use that code ANTIWAR if you want a VIP ticket for 20% off. Once again, expatmoneysummit.com. All right, just want to start with another reminder about our fundraiser. If you like our work at antiwar.com, if you appreciate what we do and you have the means, please consider helping us out by going to antiwar.com/donate. This is how we're able to do what we do. We are 100% reader funded, which means we have to do these fundraisers a few times a year. So please help us if you can. All right, so the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, IDF sniper details killing Palestinians waiting for aid. So an Israeli sniper from the IDF's Nahal brigade detailed in comments to Haaretz the killing of unarmed Palestinians, including children, who were attempting to get aid in Gaza. So this was a story that focused on what the report was about, was the mental toll that killing people in Gaza has taken on Israeli soldiers. But this is a testimony from an Israeli sniper who was involved in killing Palestinians trying to get aid. So this is what he said, and he went by the pseudonym Benny. He said, quote, "It started about 2 months ago. Every day we have the same mission, to secure the humanitarian aid in the northern Gaza Strip," end quote. And the report said that Benny and his fellow soldiers began their day at 3:30 a.m. when they set up sniper positions near where aid trucks arrived to unload their contents. He said that Gaza residents try to move forward to get a good spot in line, but they often cross an invisible line set by the IDF. So again, they go and they take their positions early in the morning. The Palestinians show up to get a good spot so they could get food. These are starving people trying to feed themselves and their families. And then some of them cross an invisible line set by the IDF. And then this is what happens from the words of an Israeli sniper. Quote, "A line that if they cross it, I can shoot them. It's like a game of cat and mouse. They try to come from a different direction every time. And I'm there with the sniper rifle, and the officers are yelling at me. Take him down, take him down. I fire 50 to 60 bullets every day. I've stopped counting kills. I have no idea how many I've killed. A lot. Children," end quote. So if you see this picture here, this is from last month of Palestinians in northern Gaza carrying back someone who was either injured or killed by the IDF while they were trying to get food, carrying them back on a pallet, probably a pallet that came off one of the aid trucks. And since the end of May, Gaza's health ministry has recorded the killing of 2,497 aid seekers, which includes Palestinians killed near sites run by the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, and people killed while attempting to reach aid trucks operated by the UN or other organizations. And another 18,294 Palestinians have been wounded while attempting to get food. So that's over 20,000 casualties, dead and wounded, of people trying to get food. And for the people who don't trust the numbers from Gaza's health ministry, I can say, just from doing what I do every day, these numbers line up with the reports that we see every day coming out of Gaza, coming from hospitals, eyewitnesses. For a little while, the UN was putting out their own number of people killed while attempting to get aid, and it was higher than what the health ministry was putting out, and they were citing hospitals and people in Gaza. And here's more testimony, and there's been other evidence from Israeli soldiers themselves that they've been killing people, been ordered to shoot on unarmed Palestinians trying to get food. Haaretz actually previously reported that IDF soldiers were ordered to fire on Palestinians attempting to reach GHF distribution sites to drive them away or disperse them, even though they posed no threat. Benny, this IDF sniper, said that if he didn't want to shoot the Palestinian civilians waiting for aid, he was forced to by his commanders and sometimes threatened. He said, quote, "The battalion commander would yell over the radio, 'Why aren't you taking them down? They are heading our way. This is dangerous.' The sense is that we are being positioned in an impossible situation, and no one had prepared us for this. The officers do not care if children die. They also do not care what it does to my soul. To them, I am just another tool," end quote. Another soldier who went by the name Yoni shared a story about killing 2 children in Beit Lahia, northern Gaza, after one soldier shouted that terrorists were approaching. This soldier said, quote, "We go into a frenzy and I get on the machine gun right away and start spraying, firing hundreds of bullets. We then charged forward and I realized it was a mistake. I saw the bodies of 2 children, maybe 8 or 10 years old. I have no idea. There was blood everywhere, lots of signs of gunfire. I knew it was all on me, that I did this. I wanted to throw up. After a few minutes, the company commander arrived and said coldly, as if he wasn't a human being, 'They entered an extermination zone. It is their fault. This is what war is like,' end quote. And other Israeli soldiers have detailed killing unarmed Palestinian civilians without expressing any remorse. I linked to this recent report from The Guardian, which included an interview with a guy named Daniel Robb, who's from the U.S., from Chicago, talking about killing unarmed Palestinian civilians, just like it was no big deal. So, again, this report is about Israeli soldiers who are being affected by the crimes that they've committed in Gaza. And, of course, there's been a lot of other reporting in Israeli media. There was a big report from 972 magazine about this, how the IDF basically sets an arbitrary line and they say anyone who enters this area, we consider them a terrorist, and that means we can kill them. And I think this is how, we've also seen testimony from doctors, including American doctors who volunteered in Gaza hospitals, who said they regularly saw children, like toddlers, with gunshot wounds to the head and to the chest. And so just there's so much evidence of Israeli soldiers intentionally killing civilians, intentionally killing children. And this is what our tax dollars are funding and supporting every single day for nearly 2 years. So I thought this was important to highlight again, because it was kind of buried in the story, the headlines about something else. But this is, again, just more evidence of them killing people trying to get food. You starve them, then you allow a little bit of food in, and you shoot them when they try to get it. I mean, how sick is this, that this just goes on every day? All right, so the next one here, Israel kills over 100 Palestinians amid ground offensive in Gaza City. So the slaughter in Gaza was just horrific on Tuesday. Israeli forces killed more than 100 Palestinians in Gaza on Tuesday, the Palestinian news agency Wafa has reported, as the IDF has ramped up its genocidal war and begun its U.S.-backed ground offensive aimed at conquering Gaza City. Medical sources told Wafa that from 12 a.m. Gaza time until 6:40 p.m., a total of 101 Palestinians were killed, including 86 in Gaza City and other parts of northern Gaza, 9 in central Gaza, and 6 in the south. As the Israeli military began its ground offensive in Gaza, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz wrote on X, "Gaza is burning." And he said that the Israeli military was striking, quote, with an iron fist at the terrorist infrastructure, and IDF soldiers are fighting bravely to create the conditions for the release of the hostages and the defeat of Hamas, end quote. That was Katz's statement. You see this picture here, just one child who was killed by the Israeli bombardment on Tuesday. Young, looks like maybe 5 years old. And there's something about this picture that got me. I mean, there's so many horrific pictures. You know, we read these statistics all the time. You see the numbers. You hear about how many thousands of children have been killed in Gaza. And it goes on every single day. And it's important, I think, to remind ourselves sometimes that every single one of these children, every child death is a tragedy, is somebody's world being destroyed, being shattered. I mean, I know that from the feeling that I have for my own children. And in some of these cases, I mean, this particular boy, we don't know his story. His family could have already been killed. He could have been orphaned for a long time. But, you know, it's just, we got to zoom in sometimes on these kind of individual people who are being massacred and destroyed. And there's just no excuse for supporting this barbarity, this violence that's happening every single day for nearly 2 years. All right. So Hamas, they've rejected Israel's claims that, you know, you have Israeli officials claiming that every single building they're destroying is Hamas infrastructure, which, of course, is absurd. And we know that the plans for Gaza City involve forcing all the Palestinians out of there, completely taking over the city, and razing every single building to the ground. And Netanyahu has told the Israeli Knesset before that they're destroying homes in northern Gaza to ensure that Palestinians have nowhere to return to. He didn't say that they're it's Hamas infrastructure. He said that they were destroying homes and that they would have no place to return. Anyway, as I mentioned, you have Israel Katz saying Gaza is burning, Gaza City is burning, and we're just seeing this just horrific violence, and the famine continues. The health ministry said that they recorded another 3 starvation deaths. All right, so the next one here, Pope Leo speaks with Gaza City priest after the IDF launches offensive. So Pope Leo XIV has spoken with a priest at the Holy Family Catholic Church in Gaza City following the start of the Israeli military's ground offensive aimed at conquering the city. This was reported by Vatican News. So Matteo Bruni, the director of the Holy See's press office, said that Pope Leo expressed to Father Gabriel Romanelli, an Argentine-born priest, his concern about what's happening in Gaza and assured him of his closeness and prayers. Romanelli and other Catholic clergy and nuns have decided to stay in Gaza City despite Israeli evacuation orders to help displaced Palestinians sheltering at the church. You see this picture here from Tuesday of Father Romanelli with the altar boys at the Holy Family Church. Every day they have daily mass and hold prayers and post pictures and videos on Facebook, and you hear explosions and you see the church shake. But these people are really living out their faith in a very brave and public way. And Bruni said that Romanelli told Leo that the parish, quote, continues to assist the approximately 450 people who have taken refuge there and those who turn to them, distributing meals and water and keeping the internal pharmacy open, end quote. Romanelli added that the oratory also continues to help children, young people, and elderly and sick people, despite the escalating conflict. Palestinians are also sheltering at the nearby St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church, and the clergy there will remain despite Israel's evacuation orders. So, again, very brave Christians at these 2 churches in Gaza City, and both churches have been attacked, bombed by Israeli forces previously. All right, so the next one here, the UN legal investigators conclude that Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza. So this is an article from Middle East Eye. The UN's top investigative body on Palestine and Israel ruled on Tuesday that Israel is guilty of the crimes of genocide in Gaza in the most authoritative pronouncement to date. The 72-page report by the UN Commission of Inquiry on Palestine and Israel finds Israel has committed 4 of the 5 acts prohibited under the 1948 Genocide Convention, and that Israeli leaders had the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a group. The finding echoes reports by Palestinian, Israeli, and international rights groups that have reached the same conclusion over the past year. But this is the first comprehensive legal probe by a UN body, serving as an indicator of a judgment by the International Court of Justice which is currently hearing a case by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide. The ICJ case is expected to take several years to be concluded. So again, just another finding that Israel is committing genocide. And I think, obviously, there's tons of evidence, but that first story I covered, the intentional killing of civilians, setting up aid and killing people when they're trying to, blocking all the food, setting up aid. I mean, it's just, again, it's just so sick on another level. All right, so the next one here, Netanyahu to visit White House for fourth time. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday that President Trump has invited him to visit the White House, which would mark the Israeli leader's fourth visit to Washington this year, as the Trump administration continues to strongly back Israel's genocidal war in Gaza and other military action across the region. Netanyahu said the visit will take place on September 29th, 3 days after he is scheduled to address the UN General Assembly in New York. His announcement came after Secretary of State Marco Rubio wrapped up a 2-day visit to Israel. Fourth visit in the year for another world leader. I have to try to figure it out, but I feel like that must be some kind of record. I mean, 4 visits from the leader of a foreign country in a single year. It's a lot. And it just goes to show how in bed this administration, how in bed Trump is with Israel, with Netanyahu, as they are committing this horrific genocide and these atrocities day in and day out in Gaza and just bombing countries across the region. Which wouldn't be possible without all this U.S. support. So President Trump on Tuesday was asked about Israel's offensive on Gaza City. And he claimed ignorance. So this is what Trump said. He was asked about the ground offensive, and he said, quote, "Well, I have to see. I mean, I don't know too much about it." He said, "I don't know too much about it." I mean, that's just so pathetic to me. This game that he plays where he kind of pretends like he cares about people suffering, how he's brought peace to the Middle East. Maybe you should learn something about it, considering you're supporting it. And I think, he probably does know a lot more than he lets on, and that he does know, the atrocities that he's supporting and funding. And he also made some claim that Hamas is going to put hostages in front of them, and he's saying that there's going to be hell to pay if they do that. He keeps bringing that up. It's just really despicable stuff here from Trump. Anyway, so, and this narrative that Trump was mad about them bombing Qatar, I mean, it's just such nonsense. I do believe those Israeli sources that Netanyahu told Trump before the strikes and that Trump did not oppose it. All right, so the next one here, bipartisan U.S. delegation draws backlash for largest ever foreign trip. So this article is from another one from Middle East Eye here. So 250 American legislators spent a week in Israel, or are spending a week in Israel, for the 50 States One Israel Conference. And this article is about how it sparked backlash across the political spectrum. But this is lawmakers, state lawmakers. And so there are representatives, lawmakers from every U.S. state on this trip, 250 of them. And so this is, again, kind of about the backlash, about all the people going after them. And there was a video from someone singing at this event in Israel, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Rightfully, people are very critical of this whole thing. And the name of the event too, 50 States One Israel. I feel like the title there implies a lot. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar lobbied the lawmakers who were on the visit to pursue the anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions legislation, which I know more than, I forget the exact number. I want to say 36 U.S. states. I know more than 30 U.S. states have anti-BDS legislation on the books already, which Netanyahu has bragged about, or his office has bragged about, playing a role in getting those laws passed. So just really shameful stuff. The next one here, Israeli airstrikes hit Yemen's Hodeidah port. So on Tuesday, Israeli airstrikes pounded Yemen's Red Sea port of Hodeidah, an attack that came as Yemenis in the capital Sana'a held a funeral for dozens of journalists who were killed by Israeli strikes last week. So one thing that Kyle covered over the weekend when I was out, last week I covered the Israeli airstrikes in Sana'a in the Al Jaf province, which killed at least 45 people, including some women and children. I didn't know at the time that some of those strikes in Sana'a hit the offices of 2 newspapers. And Kyle wrote it last Friday that 25 employees, 25 journalists for these newspapers were killed, and that number has climbed up to 31. So, again, that was last week, and now we see more strikes from Israel on Hodeidah. They seemed pretty heavy. Yemeni media reported a total of 12 strikes. Sources told Reuters that they targeted 3 docks that were repaired after being damaged in previous Israeli strikes. So far, there's been no report of casualties. I haven't checked in a while. I should have checked. I wrote this kind of earlier in the day, but I didn't see any reports of casualties. Before the attack, the Israeli military's Arabic language spokesman ordered an evacuation of the port. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, who has repeatedly threatened to unleash biblical plagues on Yemen, said the purpose of the attack was to ensure the continuation of the maritime and air blockade on the Houthi terrorist organization. So he is saying that they are imposing a maritime and air blockade on this part of Yemen, which that's something that the U.S. helped the Saudis do for many years and ended up starving many children and other people to death during that brutal war. So the Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, they announced a missile attack after this. They're saying they're not going to back down. This picture here is of the funeral for the journalists. So the strike hit the offices of 2 newspapers, including 26 September, which is the official media outlet of Yemen's military, but it is a newspaper that they bombed. And Al Yemen, another newspaper, and the Israeli military, when they announced the strike, they said that they targeted the Houthis' public relations department. And this is something that they did in Iran. If you remember, they bombed the state media broadcaster during a live broadcast, and it was caught on camera. So this is a pattern that we see from Israel targeting news organizations and killing journalists, especially in Gaza, where over 200 have been killed. All right, so the next one here, Israeli strikes on Lebanon wound women and children. This one is from Jason Ditz. So Israeli warplanes carried out a flurry of airstrikes against a building in the southern Lebanese town of Nabatea, causing major damage to the building and the surrounding residential areas and wounding at least 14 civilians. 7 women and 4 children were among the wounded. Ambulances on the scene took the wounded to nearby hospitals. The IDF claimed that it was Hezbollah headquarters, but they offered no evidence. And the fact that so many women and children were injured certainly makes it seem that the Israeli claim is unlikely to be true. So they continue to bomb Lebanon. It's been daily airstrikes lately. All right, so the next one here, Israel is arming and bankrolling Druze fighters in Syria's Suwayda. So this is another one from Jason. So with tensions continuing to simmer in Syria's Suwayda governorate, senior Druze commanders are reporting that the Israeli government has been arming and financing Druze militias that are seeking a large amount of autonomy over the area. Suwayda is the historic population center of the Druze minority, and back in July, there was substantial massacres of Druze civilians amid a military crackdown, massacres by the new forces of the new government. And now Israel, they've been engaged in these talks with HTS that the U.S. is pushing for a deal between them. But they're continuing to push further into southwestern Syria. They've taken some territory there. And now they're funding the Druze. And I know that the Druze certainly are facing a real threat, obviously, from the HTS government. But I know that Israel's motives here for funding this group are not humanitarian ones. They prefer Syria to be kind of broken up and broken apart. And they want this, it seems like they want to keep pushing in and taking more territory. All right, so the next one here, Trump says that the U.S. has bombed 3 boats near Venezuela. So President Trump told reporters on Tuesday that the U.S. has knocked off a total of 3 boats in the Caribbean as the U.S. military campaign near Venezuela continues. The president previously announced the bombing of 2 boats near Venezuela that he claimed were carrying drugs without providing evidence, and released footage of the strikes. But he told reporters, quote, "We knocked off actually 3 boats, not 2, but you saw 2, end quote. He made the comments when asked what message he wanted to send to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He said, quote, "Stop sending Tren de Aragua into the United States. Stop sending drugs into the United States," end quote. The Trump administration has claimed that Maduro controls the Venezuela gang Tren de Aragua, or TDA, but that contradicts a declassified U.S. intelligence assessment. So a memo from the Office of the Director of Intelligence, dated April 7th, 2025, said, quote, "The Maduro regime probably does not have a policy of cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the United States," end quote. The Trump administration launched the campaign against Venezuela despite the country's willingness to cooperate on prisoner swaps and deportations. Maduro said on Monday that communications with the U.S. have been thrown away, though he said that the 2 countries are still in contact to facilitate the return of Venezuelans from the U.S. Maduro said, quote, "The communications with the government of the U.S. have been thrown away. They have been thrown away by them with their threats of bombs, death, and blackmail," end quote. So, we've been talking about this a lot, but just think it's important that, they're using, this clearly seems to be a different agenda than drug trafficking when, this is Venezuela, a country that they've wanted regime change in for a very long time. The first Trump administration tried to do a regime change, and there's reports that they're considering bombing targets inside Venezuela. We've seen some criticism from Democrats in Congress. Adam Schiff, who's a senator now, he called the strikes lawless killings and warned that it could lead to a full-blown war. We've also seen criticism from Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky. He's been very critical of this military action, and he's gotten a lot of heat for it because a lot of people, the MAGA people and Republicans, are really supportive of this new combining and merging the war on terror with the war on drugs, but also potentially turning it into a regime change operation in Latin America. The whole thing is just a recipe for disaster. And this has been, murder on the high seas. Just bombing people, claiming that they're criminals, or now claiming that they're terrorists or narco-terrorists, and just blowing them out of the water with no trial or anything like that. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. places Colombia on rogue nation list for drugs, Petro says. So this article is from Bloomberg. So President Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, he said that the U.S. has decertified Colombia as a partner in the war on drugs amid the biggest cocaine boom in history. The move is likely to hit foreign investment, multilateral funding, and tourism, as a longtime ally of Washington now finds itself in the same rogue category as Venezuela, Bolivia, and Myanmar. Petro said in a televised cabinet meeting on Monday evening, quote, "The U.S. is decertifying us after dozens of deaths, police, soldiers, common people trying to avoid cocaine from getting to them," end quote. The U.S. has not separately confirmed the news, so far no confirmation from the U.S. But Colombia, I believe they're a major non-NATO ally. They've been one of the biggest recipients of U.S. aid this century, receiving about $14 billion, including military assistance to battle drug cartels and Marxist insurgents. However, relations between Trump and Colombia's leftist president quickly soured, with the 2 leaders having very different approaches to the war on drugs, migration, and relations with Venezuela. And Petro has rejected the U.S. claims that Maduro is a cartel leader. And Colombia is where the majority of the world's cocaine comes from, but it looks like the U.S. might be gearing up for some kind of, who knows if they're planning something for Colombia. But again, they're a big U.S. ally. They get a whole ton of military aid, military training, and all that. So this is kind of a big deal here. Again, not confirmed by the U.S. yet. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. clears a NATO-funded arms package for Ukraine. So Reuters has reported that President Trump's War Department has approved the first weapons packages that will be sent to Ukraine under a new NATO initiative that involves U.S. allies funding the shipments of U.S. weapons into the proxy war. So far, NATO allies have pledged about $2 billion to the initiative known as the Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List, or PEARL. Sources told Reuters that Elbridge Colby, the War Department's policy chief, has approved as many as two $500 million weapon shipments for Ukraine under PEARL. The sources did not detail the types of weapons that will be sent to Ukraine under the PEARL initiative, besides saying that it will include air defenses. The report said the weapons will be sent to Ukraine from U.S. military stockpiles. So Trump has continued to send weapons shipments that were approved under the Biden administration, which in his final months, they approved like billions and billions of dollars of weapon shipments, so they have plenty to send. But this is the first, as far as we know, weapons packages that are going to be pulled from U.S. military stockpiles and shipped right to Ukraine that have been approved by this Trump administration. They have also approved arms sales to Ukraine, including one for long-range cruise missiles, and that deal will be partially funded by U.S. military aid. And this news comes as, there's just really no sign that there's going to be any sort of peace deal in Ukraine. All right, so the last story here, Trump backs AG Bondi's assertion on hate speech. So this article is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So Attorney General Pam Bondi said that people saying that Charlie Kirk's assassination was okay are not engaging in free speech. She's calling it hate speech. And President Trump has backed Bondi's remarks when asked by the press. So Bondi said in a podcast with Katie Miller, who's Stephen Miller's wife, who apparently she has a podcast now and gets like senior U.S. officials on it. But Bondi said, quote, "There's free speech and then there's hate speech. It's not free speech when you come out and say it's okay what happened to Charlie. We're seeing people online posting hate speech. They should be shut down. They should be stopped from doing this, and they should know that there are consequences," end quote. So Bondi was actually criticized by Kirk's supporters, who point out that the conservative commentator previously argued against the government targeting people for speech. This is something he said last year on X, quote, "Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free," end quote. So Tuesday, Bondi attempted to clarify her remarks in an X post. She said, quote, "Hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment," end quote. So she tried to make it seem like she was talking about threats, but Trump seemed to back her. He was asked by reporters about what she said about hate speech, and he said, quote, "We'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Maybe they'll have to go after you," end quote. And so, I mean, we've seen in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there's been kind of a frenzy from people on the right. And it seems like this almost kind of checked some people, at least, because I did see a lot of people on the right say, well, reject what Bondi is saying here. So, that's good to see, at least, that there has been backlash for this. But Trump, I mean, nothing really surprises me with him at this point, considering everything else, he's been doing, especially, trying to deport people for criticizing Israel. But Pam Bondi is just bad news. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints. One from Dan Steinbach, New York Declaration from U.S.-led destabilization to Chinese-led development in the Middle East. One from Ted Galen Carpenter, shooting down Russian drones over Poland. Who is trying to start World War III? One from Branko March-Teach, Trump's foreign policy is like Biden's but far worse. One from Joseph Solis Mullen, Trump, India, and the China Hawks horror. And our spotlight is from Hadil Awad, Israel wants U.S. to evacuate Al-Shifa Hospital again to kill hope. So please go check all that out. Lots of stuff to read at antiwar.com. One thing I want to mention, so I just had a long weekend, and I'm actually going to be taking another long weekend starting Thursday. So that means there's not going to be a Friday show this week. So this is an extra short week of anti-war news. I'm going to a media award thing that I was invited to in Chicago, which should be cool. But so I'll mention it at the top of tomorrow's episode, so people who don't listen to the end know that having an extra short week this week. But antiwar.com will be updated and everything as usual. So you could always go there to get your news. But anyway, that is it for me for today. Please help us with our fundraiser if you can. Follow us on social media, all that stuff that I always say. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. Thanks for listening.